Marshall in the middle.
Well, yeah. Hey, everybody, we're live on the YouTubes and internets and the world here with say your last name for me, Patrick. Is it Thibeault?
Yeah, Thibeault.
Thibeault. I love it. That's that's classic French, right?
Yes, French.
Yeah, that's cool. Where are you from?
I was an Army brat. My dad was born up in Maine. I was actually born up there when he was on recruiting duty after he came back from NAM. And we moved around. I lived at Bragg when I was a kid,
Oh,
Germany for
wow.
10 years,
Oh, cool. So you was lots of
graduated from
different.
high school in Seoul, in Korea.
Oh, yeah. Seoul American high school graduate. That's cool. Young
Yeah.
son.
Yeah, Youngsong Garrison. Yep.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, what era did you grow up? Like I was I went to high school, graduated in '86. So what time frame were you graduating high school and doing that kind of stuff?
Well, I graduated up in 89. I
Okay.
was, I
Okay.
was there for the Olympics in Korea, which was, awesome. And total experience, as a kid that you never once in a lifetime thing. Just the timing was just right. We would take the train to the Olympic Stadium and go watch the events. I got to watch weightlifting or Olympic style weightlifting, wrestling, and soccer and other sports,
Oh,
which was
that
pretty
is
cool
awesome.
with my dad and my family.
That's awesome. So what did your dad do in the military?
Well, he was a stationary. He was a brigade CSM, command sergeant major in Korea, and
Oh.
then he went on after that to Fort Sheridan as a garrison CSM, and then he retired from there. Of course,
Oh,
I
that
joined
is
the Army out of Korea. Um, I, I did my physical, and then I went to flew in from Seoul to San Francisco to El Paso for boot camp. Myself, of course.
Oh, you went to boot camp in El Paso? I did too, man.
Yep, good old El Paso.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So tell me what it was like growing up and moving around and all those kinds of things. What was your favorite place to be?
Korea was my favorite place. Of course, I was a junior and a senior in high school. Being able to get a part-time job at the commissary, bagging groceries, and then working in a bakery. So I had my own little source of income. And of course, back then, we used to be able to go downtown or Itaewon, which was the drinking district. And, you'd have a bunch of high school kids out, past 1 o'clock in the morning, doing stuff that you couldn't do legally here in America. Of course,
Oh,
we knew that if we got in trouble, we would get in big trouble. So we never really cut up or caused any problems. We
oh,
minded our
wow.
P's and Q's. So, but we had a good time.
That's
And just
great.
that, besides, going out, it was the culture. I've never been to an Asian country before, and it was nice to embrace the culture of South Korea and the history, of course, of our service members in the Korean War, and made me appreciate when my dad would take me out on going to different places where Americans shed their blood, like Incheon. We went up to the DMZ, and I never knew how, yeah, what kind of life lessons that really was until I went into combat myself.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, Korea. My second place would have to have been Fayetteville, North Carolina. Uh, from before that, we were in Germany. A place called Noyon. It was a Pershing missile base, and we went to Fayetteville, and we lived off base. We lived in the house. We lived in the regular. And it was different. I never grew up in that environment with regular folks that had nothing to do with the military per se, dealing with day-to-day things like that, because it was hard for me to adjust to that. It took a couple of years, and then when
Right.
I finally did adjust, we had to move again. So
Yeah.
that's life as an Army brat. Of course, I knew
Right.
I was going to become a soldier and a paratrooper because I saw the guys jumping out of airplanes, and I knew I had to do that.
Oh wow, so that's interesting. So you saw what was happening and wanted to be a paratrooper, huh?
Oh yeah, I knew. We'd watch them jump. Anytime we'd go on base, go to the commissary or whatever. You could see the guys jumping out onto the drop zones. I was like, that looks like fun. Of course, I didn't know what they were doing before or after. I just saw them, slowly falling to the ground with a parachute. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was still fun doing that.
Yeah,
So
you didn't realize it was a follow-on mission, huh?
yeah, it's just, and really, I looked at it as I got older. That was just the way I got to work. Once I was at work, it was all the same. That's just how I drove to work, jumping out of a
Yeah,
plane.
yeah. That's a good way to look at it. The parachute is simply a means of delivery to battle. I mean, that's all it
Yep.
is.
And of course, I was a medic, and no one in my family was medical. I was going to either be an 11 Bravo or a medic. And I had a dream about being a medic. Actually, I had a dream about becoming a medic. And I said, well, I think I'll become a medic. I had no medical background at all. But that's just the way, I guess we choose our fates. And of
Right,
course,
right.
I went on from that to become a registered nurse in the civilian world, and then a nurse practitioner now. So
Oh,
it's
that's great.
the skills that I learned as a medic, I use them in, the basics that I learned and the advanced skills that I learned, I do every day now as a medical provider. So
So,
yeah,
what was it like, for the Army training and all the things? Were you good at the Army stuff and being a paratrooper and that kind of thing?
no, I could never keep my feet and knees straight. I had duck feet. So
Oh, wow.
in jump school, when we had to do the 34-foot tower, all the black hats would see is my feet facing out like that. And they didn't think they were together, but to me, they were together. So I kept having to
Right,
go down that, and it was fun. But after doing it about 15 times, it gets a little tiring. But yeah,
right.
so I mean, I had some adjustment to do. The
Oh, that's
schooling
great.
part to be a medic, it required that you study. I think it's just like any other class. Looking back, you study, you'll do good. If not, you'll flunk.
Right.
I never flunked a test, and I did study. And we had drill sergeants there that kept us in line, and I appreciate that we did because they kept us focused. I was still a 18-year-old kid back then, so on my own, at the time making bank. Oh, what am I going to do? No, I'm going to go and study so I can get out. And sadly, we had a couple of men in my basic training unit that went on to be medics school that they flunked out of school. Why? Because they didn't focus on their studies.
Right.
So,
Right.
and it's funny. I ran into a fella who flunked out of medic school, and you're not wrong. He became an 88 Mike truck driver, and he got assigned to the 101st, and I got assigned to the 160th, and different units. But he was doing a support operation, and we were there doing some other stuff. And I don't remember his name, but I remember his face, and it was pretty different. But yeah, you're right. That's the only time I ran into somebody like that. Oh, I ran into some other people during the first Gulf War too. Yeah. So, it's funny. I ran into a girl that I went to school with to be a medic, and she was assigned to a medevac unit. And their unit it was a guard unit. They staged out of Fort Stewart to train. And I was stationed at Hunter Army Airfield. And I went and worked with them for a couple of weeks to do some medevac training. And she was already deployed to Desert Storm, but her unit was there. And I never thought a second of it until I was coordinating for rear echelon medical support in case, back in the rear, we needed to call a medevac. The unit would do it, and she was there. So you never know who you run into.
That ain't no lie. That ain't no lie. Yeah, it's a lot of folks have impact from from all over the world. Who was someone that looked after you and took after you when you were young and learning? Was there somebody that really mentored you?
I would have to say, as a young troop, my first NCO. He was an E5. He got promoted to E6 shortly thereafter. This was back in 1990 after being assigned to my first unit, the 160th. And he would smoke us. I mean, just old school. He was only 6 or 7 years older than me, but he had that mentality. He would smoke us. We would go on mud runs in the backwoods at Hunter Army Airfield, where we just wear our boots. Am I allowed to cuss on here or no?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Say
Okay,
what you got to say.
the shorts that we would wear, we called them "catch me, fuck me" shorts because they were black PT shorts and they were so short, and a T-shirt, and we'd do mud runs.
I know what you're
And
talking about.
and then he would make us do forced road marches. Now I thought that this was rough, but it was actually a great discipline tool. He would tie some rope to each of us medics, put us in a file, and we'd have to road march together in unison. And it was basically a you know a gut check kind of thing. You don't want to fall out. And it's really, the pace was not that fast, but it's a gut check thing. So he really learned how to push me, and because I was a horrible runner I passed jump school, but I wasn't a great runner, never have been. But uh, he retired as a major. His name was Randall Pitcher. Uh, he was my first mentor,
That's
I would
great.
say. And of course, the physician that we had, he was a mentor. He taught me how to throw in my first set of stitches on a patient, how to drain a wound, which antibiotic to prescribe appropriately. And he graduated from, this guy was hardcore. He graduated from West Point, became a helicopter pilot. Then he decided he wanted to go to flight school. Or he went to flight school. Then he wanted to go to medical school. So he went to medical school, but he still kept his flight license. So from time to time, us medics would go up with him while he'd go fly our unit's helicopters. And he was, most doctors are real smooth. We had a Coast Guard unit right next to us, and he got clearance to fly their helicopters. So we were flying over the ocean, and I'd go in for the ride too. They call them dolphin helicopters. They're search and rescue birds. So he was a mentor too, but he was pretty, he graduated from West Point, so he knew how to be an officer. He was a true gentleman's officer, and that's something that I see is missing nowadays in the military a little bit. He let the NCO do his job, and he did his.
Amen. Amen. It's great to have wonderful leaders that were around to help and mentor us and those kinds of things. How was your dad as a mentor growing up? I mean, he was a command sergeant major. Were you and your dad close?
Yes. He never brought home the military with him, though. I mean, obviously I knew he was in the military, but even when he was my dad, I didn't call him by his rank. I knew to call anyone else. I didn't care what their rank was. To me, they were a sir, whether or not they were just a sergeant or a colonel. I mean, so when I talked to people, it didn't matter what their rank was when I was a kid. So it wasn't, he didn't bring home the military. In fact, he would bring home some MREs once in a while from a field exercise or whatever, but it wasn't military discipline. It was just regular discipline.
Amen.
Sadly, he passed away last year in July. He lived a good life. I was there. I spent the last night with him, as the son should. But yeah, that's sad. So,
Amen.
Was he strict? Yeah, but I'm glad he was. But he wasn't overtly strict or abusive. He was very loving. And you don't realize when you're a kid how loving your parents really are until you grow up and you realize, wow, when you're a kid like that, all you can do is think of yourself.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Amen. Amen.
So
So tell me about we as you watch and you deal with loss of loved ones and things like that. Tell me about they say there's no atheist in foxholes. Tell me about your spirituality and what that looks like.
well, I look at it as I'm a Christ-centered person. I'm Catholic, but I sort of go along the lines of what the Baptists do. I mean, I'm more fundamentalist. Uh, that's just the religion part. As far as how I live my life, I believe in dignity of the individual. That's why I became a medic too, because I learned, regardless of who the individual was, they deserve, once they're under my care, they don't deserve any abuse. They deserve to be treated like a human being.
Amen.
That's something that I strictly enforced as I became an NCO with my young troops. You know, if we had some enemy captured POWs, you have no right to treat them other than any other human being. It's okay to have dislike them because you're ingrained to not like your enemy, but you still treat them as a human being. Yeah, there are no atheists in foxholes, and sadly, we I've had some young kids young soldiers that have died, and I think they're up in heaven doing what they're doing. But that's why another reason why I became a medic, to save lives. I've had, obviously, I working in the civilian sector because I went to college, then I joined the National Guard, went to an infantry unit, but worked as an RN. I've had more loss of life as an RN than I have as a medic, just because of the years and the nights and the codes. So I mean, I've experienced it on the battlefield and in the hospital setting, and it's sad. And sometimes it's not sad. They live a life of dignity. They die with dignity. And I worked at the VA, taking care of other vets. That's the only job I could ever do. So I sat in the room when a patient was passing away, when there was no one else there. So just so he knew, he or didn't know that another fellow vet's there for his passing. That meant something to me, at least. And spiritually, it probably meant something to that fellow soldier that I was taking care of, or airman, or whatever service they were in. I say soldier. So
Amen.
is there a spirituality to it? Hell yeah, there is. And it's up to me to, I feel it's my spiritual calling to take care of other vets. So that's why I work at the VA, taking care of other veterans, doing what I do. Because it is my spiritual calling. I couldn't do anything else. It has its ups and downs, but it's still good.
Amen. Amen. So you mentioned a very exclusive special operations unit, and you just kind of glossed over it as to what you guys were doing. Tell me more about your mission in the 160th. That's a famous aviation regiment. Am I talking about the same thing?
Yeah, the 160th SOAR. Yeah, we used to be a real quiet unit. That's why I sort of just, and I guess I'm more old school with it, where you just, you don't. But now, of course, there's been movies made about it. They've been in movies. In fact, it's funny. They were filming. The guys went down to, I think, somewhere in South America to film Clear and Present Danger with Han Solo, the fella, I don't remember that guy, and William DeVoe. So they went down somewhere in South America to film the scenes. Our unit's helicopters were included in the movie. I was supposed to go down there as the medic, but they decided instead of a medic, they wanted a physician. So instead of going there to do some training, I got to go to Canada and of course it's cold, and it was like in February. I got to go to Canada and do some winter training instead. It was in February of some year. So yeah, I mean, it was a special ops aviation. They have highly trained, support people like myself, pilots, crew, support elements, and we were some of the only medics in the military that were on jump status because we were paratroopers. We had a paratrooper mission and flight medic mission. Now we didn't have medical birds; they were just assault helicopters. So I got to practice shooting the miniguns, the big guns, the 6 guns that are on there. And I'm not an expert with the gear that's in the helicopters. The most that the crew chiefs would let me do supervised was wash the windows, honestly. and they would inspect that.
Oh,
But
that's
I'm
great.
sure that's changed because, that was back in the 90s when we first got on flight status for search and rescue missions.
Oh, wow. That's
But I'm
great.
sure they've changed because we went to a reunion a couple of years ago for my battalion, and I met up with all the medics and took some pictures with them. What unit? And we went from like 4 medics, and they had like 5 times as many. So it's gotten so much bigger. Of course, they're not going to tell a total civilian like myself, even though I retired from the Guard, what their mission MO is and all that. And I didn't bother to ask because I would have done the same thing. And but I'm glad that they have all the support now that they need. They have psychiatry, because and it's funny, they were almost offering me a job to work there as a civilian.
Oh,
But
really?
I couldn't have taken it. I mean, because they had they needed civilian medical support. But nah, I wasn't going to take it. You couldn't pay. And no, but so yeah, the 160th is a great unit. A lot of the stuff they do, you still don't hear about ever in the media. In fact, we went on a mission once that I didn't even know got declassified 20 years later. And
Yeah.
I just learned to, I just assumed, keep my mouth shut about it because that's just how so the things that happen, you just don't talk about. That's the mentality that we grew up in with the unit.
Yeah. Yeah. I went on a secret mission when I was a young paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division that got declassified a couple of years later. It was neat to be able to wear the combat patch and different things that I suddenly was allowed to wear and talk about after it was declassified. I enjoyed that a lot. Yeah. So, what were you part of?
Which organization?
No, so you told me you was on a secret mission that was declassified
Oh,
that you can talk about now. So tell me at least a little bit about it so I can look it up.
I don't. You want to know the truth? I don't even remember the name of it.
Oh
I don't know.
no!
It never really shook my ego that much.
I got
Or
you.
I just, okay, I do what I got to do. But
Amen. Amen.
I mean, I went and fought with them in Desert Storm when I was still a kid, and I
Yeah.
was with the unit for 6 years, and then I went out and went to college and joined the Guard, and I didn't travel as much with the Guard, but I went to Ecuador twice, of course, Afghanistan for combat operations, and some state stuff, state emergencies. I mean, it's not a life and death thing, but when it affects citizens, it makes a difference,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we all got our, and I never really, you know, we wear jump wings and stuff, and oh, that's great, but it's not going to buy you a cup of coffee when it comes down to it.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? So tell me about, the time when you were able to save someone, or maybe a time when you couldn't save someone, or a situation that was life threatening or scary. Do you have something like that?
Oh yeah, I laugh at it. We were doing a mission down in Panama. Now this was a training mission. When we jumped in, we were supposed to set up a LZ, a landing zone, for a bunch of other helicopters to come in to drop off some folks from some unit. And, but I was briefed that none of that was going to happen, just so I would pack appropriately. And all we were going to do is go on an escape and evade mission. We knew it was just because it was a Jungle Operations Training Center down south. So of course I packed appropriately, and I knew that we were going to do a long patrol through the damn jungle and to be prepared. So of course the LZ, they set up the LZ for the drop, for the Blackhawks. Of course, the Blackhawks never got showed up. The mission got aborted, and we had to, because of enemy contact, so we had to escape and evade. And so we're walking through the. Of course, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're knee high in swamp, literally, like. And one of the guys he was carrying the M60. Back then we had the M60, the old machine gun. He was carrying the M60, so he goes plop, face first down into the. Of course, I just grab him, pick him up, say, "You okay?" See, I just fell. I said, "Okay." So we divided up his ammo and gear, so he needed a rest maybe, and we went another couple 100 meters in the swamp, and he goes swap plop, and then he starts going gurgle gurgle gurgle, and of course he's starting to aspirate. So I'm going, "Oh shit!" So I grab him. We carry him to some dry land, and he's aspirated some stuff. So luckily I had my aid bag packed appropriately. So it's dark. We didn't walk around with night vision goggles, on patrol. It was all flashlights. I put a check, of course, back, you always check airway, breathing, circulation. I didn't carry any oxygen on me in a ruck, in a medical ruck. So, but he was breathing. He was itchy. I gave him a little bit of Benadryl to help with the itch, but he was somewhat sedated, but he was just scratching all over. Of course, something got into his system. So I had to get an IV in him because he felt hot. I mean, I had to get an IV. So, but he kept moving his arms around. And the guys went up to me and said, "You're the only one that can do this. You're the only one that can do this." So it was, okay, yeah, I'm the only one that can do this. Of course, I got the IV in him. We called in for a real medevac helicopter to come and get him. They showed up about an hour later because where we were and where the medevac helicopter was in Panama City is a complete different location. It's all the way across the country. It's such a small country, but it took an hour. And I went with the medevac helicopter to go back to the rear because we had our other, like my boss's, like E4, E5 medic at the time, who was outranked me. He was staying in the rear just in case something real bad happened. And so he covered that. And while I went, because I started working on the guy, I'm going to follow up with him. We got him admitted to the ICU. He went on a ventilator for a little bit, and then he was fine. He actually went home. 30 years later, the guy doesn't remember any of this. I wouldn't have remembered it either if it happened to me. But I was talking to him on a telephone call. He said, "Do you remember when you did this?" And he was like, "No, I don't remember." But yeah, saved his life. There's some more less humorous times I've worked on people. When I was a kid during the first Gulf War, it was somewhat bloody, and if just what you consider pain, blood, and deformity in every fashion of the sense, I dealt with that too in the back of a helicopter. Guys that had arms blown up, legs, stumps missing, blood. And the only place you could get an IV to treat for shock was in the neck. And then, thank God there was morphine, because I was running around the back of the helicopter, bumping on hitting their stumps with my boots. When you're a kid like that. And then, of course, when the mission was over, all the blood on the floor of the helicopter coagulated, and it had that smell of death. And I mean, so I've had good times, and I've had good times with bad results. But it's all about saving lives and doing the best you can. Yeah. That's all I want to say about that, as Forrest would say.
Yeah, amen, amen. Yeah, right. It's being a medical professional, especially as many years as you've been a part of it. Um, it's just got to over time be something that you got to tune out somehow, some kind of way. You got to put it in a different category in your own head or something, because of all the pain and misery and blood and deformity and things that you're talking about, right?
Yeah. It's funny. And we got our limitations, right? I'm just, I'm moving to another room because I got to charge up my phone here. It's
Sure.
funny you mentioned that. When I came back from Afghanistan in 2005, I went back to work a few weeks later to the same place I worked at, same clinic. And there was a patient screaming that, I don't know why, he was just screaming because nobody could get an IV on him, right? And this is in a medical unit in the hospital. And all that screaming and screaming. And I said, listen, dude, I got to go. I can't handle your screaming. So it reminded me too much of the war, even though it was in an air-conditioned room, medical unit. And I was like, oh man, I got to get out of here. Because I was the guy that, excuse me, I was the guy that they would call if you couldn't start an IV on somebody, because I've got experience. But this guy, it wasn't his veins were right there. It was just the screaming part of it that I couldn't handle. So do you get numb to it? Maybe a little bit, but still it touches you every day. It still touches you every day. It doesn't go away, unfortunately.
So if you had to go back and live one deployment or one situation or one assignment again, where would you go? What would you do? What year would it be?
I don't believe in that. I don't want to go back.
Amen. I hear you. I hear you. That's fair. That's fair.
It's I sure wouldn't want to go back and change anything, because it sort of developed who I am, and
Right.
something else worse could happen, or an outcome could be different. Of course, my time in the 160 was great. It was a
Right.
super time. It was the best of times. It was the worst. I'm just gonna plug in my phone here. I'm not
Okay.
leaving yet.
Yeah, no problem.
I didn't think that. Sometimes I don't think. Or the place. We were embedded with the Afghan National Army in Afghanistan at a place called Herat by the Iranian border. And it was a time of my life. I was working with the ANA, conventional forces, with their medics. And this was in 2004, 2005. And, I was a part of that history. Would I like to go back there? Yeah. Of course, what happened last year in September, really the way we just left our allies without keeping an airbase open was devastating. And that put a sour taste in my mouth that's still there. I know there's politics involved. I don't really care about that. But just the way it was done, I felt, I don't know how non-vets felt when they came home. And I'm not going to compare myself to the shit that they had to endure. But when that happened, because I didn't come home to that. I came home to till my parents came pick me up at the airport. But just that feeling, even just thinking about it right now, right here in my throat, makes me want to cough. My throat constricts. I get so upset thinking about it. I'm coughing. Maybe, I got issues just like anybody else, I guess. But would I change it? No. When I was there, I got to meet Karzai, the president of the time. He was, sorry, I get a little emotional. I get a little perplexed. I got to work on Afghan, citizens, local nationals. Got to work with the Afghan army, treat their wounded instead of my own people's wounded. Let them go out and do the fight instead of American soldiers. I was for all that. I don't want to see any more American bloodshed. I don't like to see our kids die like that, our young soldiers. Of course, I was 34 in Afghanistan playing a young man's game, with when
age.
you're in the guard, it's just the missions. You're a little bit older doing things younger kids usually do.
Yeah.
But I had the experience to back me up. So
that's excellent.
That's all I got to say about that.
So tell me about your family. Brag on your children and your loved ones and your nieces and nephews and those around you.
Well, I live up here in Northwest Indiana. Used to live in Indianapolis. I have one daughter. She's 4 years old. And started a little late. And she's in pre-K now. Of course, the bulk of my day when I'm at home, it's playing Barbie.
Amen, right?
So, I do what I have to do, keep my daughter happy. Which usually just involves getting a Barbie, and I just put on my little girl voice and I talk like, what else am I going to do, So, that's, she doesn't know about, she doesn't understand anything about the military or anything like that. I have 2 sisters. One lives in Kentucky and the other lives in Pennsylvania. And my mom, of course, is still living down in Kentucky. And my in-laws live here in the same district that I live in here in Northwest Indiana. And I'm a married man. So my wife stays at home. I go out and do what I have to do.
Amen. So what kind of hobbies do you have? I know you've written a book, right? Have you written a book?
Yeah, I wrote a book about being a combat medic.
Oh, tell me about that.
It's my journey as a combat medic. Couldn't come up with any other fancier title, right? But I wanted to write about what I did just to try to get some closure. And I wrote that 10, 12 years ago now. At the time, I needed some closure. So I had to write the book. Otherwise, I would have probably gone insane a little bit. When you got everything going on in your head. I'm not I don't resort to alcohol or drugs or anything like that as my outlet. But I wrote the book. Obviously, it's I'm not world famous or anything like that. They never made a movie out of it. Everyone's fantasy, but it doesn't really happen. But it got picked up by a publisher in England, so they focused on military books. So I was proud of that. That was something. And I got some closure from it. I felt some, how you could take a sigh when you've done something and say, yeah, that was good. I said what had to be said. But by no means am I an author. I'm not whimsical with the words, but it's been described as you just sitting down having a drink with somebody, them telling you their story is how it read. Well, I'll take that.
Amen.
As far as hobbies now, I'm a failed gardener.
Tomato plant's not doing too well.
Well, I tried doing indoor basement garden where I would have everything in indoors inside a green room, the
Right.
plastic green room, and I put it in my basement. And I had green lights and everything, but I injured my back again about 3 months ago, where my back went out and I couldn't take care of them. I tried to revitalize them a month ago. It's just it wasn't in the. So I got a bunch of plants downstairs that are dying that I'm gonna have to throw them outside in the where I garden at normally. It was a failed attempt, but I tried. At least I have two greenhouses, plastic, greenhouses that I can use for something. Another hobby that I have is called I like to freeze dry stuff. I have one of those freeze dryers
Oh,
where you can
wow.
freeze dry food, and you cook. I only use cooked, like whatever I cook, and then I freeze dry it. It takes all the moisture out of it, and you store it, and it lasts for decades. And you can do it and make like green beans. You can make chips out of them basically by you just freeze dry them and you eat them and they become they're crispy chips. So that's a hobby. I think I don't know about every vet, but my other hobby, of course, is collecting guns and shooting them. I'm guilty of having the police called on me in my neighborhood once because I was walking around the neighborhood with my night vision goggles on. And of course, obviously, I'm not going to go around looking in people's cars, but I was literally just walking around the neighborhood with my civilian acquired. I don't want CID to come knock on my door. Civilian acquired night vision devices and my civilian acquired helmet, just walking around my neighborhood, minding my P's and Q's, and just playing with my night vision equipment because I had a two PVS 14s and a clip-on thermal imager that you clip on in front of the system so you can see thermal as well. And of course, the police. So I'm just hanging out in front of my yard, just minding my business. Police show up, two police officers, and they wanted to know what I was doing. So I just said, I'm just walking around my neighborhood. This is my house. And I let them look through the stuff. They thought it was cool. Obviously, if I'm going to have to spend that kind of money on gear, I'm not going to go around, looking in people's cars, getting myself in trouble and just staying in front of my house. Well, they were cool about it. But yeah, so sometimes now what I do, well, before I go out on a walk in my subdivision, I'll go on, they have a Facebook page. I just warn the people, if you see some dude walking around with night vision goggles on and a helmet, don't call the police. I'm not going to go look in your car. I don't care what's in your car. I'm just walking down the sidewalk, enjoying my, the technology and having a good time, getting a little bit of nighttime exercise. And
Oh,
that's a
that's
hobby.
great. Yeah, I love it. I love it. That is awesome. That is awesome. I watch people buying all the latest gadgets and tools and toys, and of course, I'm guilty of it too, right? I'm doing a podcast, right? I got the latest toys, and we had issues with sound tonight, so we couldn't get
Yeah.
started on time. So, yeah, I know what it's like to want to do that kind of thing. So, yeah, yeah.
So my biggest gun that I have a 50 cal.
Okay.
It's a single shot bolt action. I have a suppressor for it. That's all great. It's all legal, but I can't shoot it anywhere around here. I have to travel 3 hours south just to go shoot it somewhere because nobody, I don't know the farmers around here. And of course there's mostly flat land. So you risk for that round traveling a couple miles, it's going to run into somebody and you don't want it to run into a horse or a cow or a person or a vehicle. So there's nowhere around here I can go shoot it.
Oh wow, that's awful when you got a gun too big to shoot.
And they don't let you shoot them at the gun ranges either. because the
Arr.
caliber's too powerful. It'll go through the berm.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't want
They
nobody
used
shooting
to,
an M2 around me.
and I shoot low. I mean, I use, I shoot low. I don't, and I think of the person that, behind me or in front of me, but that's the rule. So I'm stuck with a 50 cal that I can't even use. I haven't even shot it through the suppressor yet.
Oh my gosh.
This spring, hopefully, I'll drive down south and go shoot it. It'll
Well,
be
when
fun.
you do, I want you to take a video of it. I want to see it shot suppressed and unsuppressed. That's what I want. I've never seen a suppressor on a 50 cal. I've seen a lot of things, but not a suppressor on a 50 cal.
Yeah, I'll record it. Be happy. Yeah, of course I'm going to record it.
Yeah, right. That would be cool. I want to. Yeah, send it to me. I definitely would be interested in that. That's for sure. That's
And
for
the other
sure.
thing that I like is I have thermoscopes, heat-seeking thermoscopes. And I
Yeah,
have one
yeah.
that's rated for the 50 cal. But again, I go back to that problem. One, there's nowhere I can shoot at night, really, and there's nowhere I can shoot a 50 cal minus that at night. But if I could find a place, yeah, a couple hundred yards, really, that's what you need. So that's
Oh
of
man.
course, I have every other caliber from down 22 up to 50.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Okay, so here's the question for you then, if you've got all that kind of stuff. All right. So, um, let's see. How's the best way to put this? Okay, there's something going on in your neighborhood and they need you, and you can carry a pistol and a long gun out of your house that you currently have. What are you carrying out the house and why?
Well, I consider my CZ Scorpion 9mm to be a pistol. And if there's going to be a problem in my neighborhood, I want something that has some stopping power. A 5.56 round doesn't really have a lot of stopping power, but I need mobility. So I have a semi-automatic 308 or 7.62 that could take a couple rounds, but it'll stop a vehicle eventually, especially if you have armor piercing. So that's what I would take. It'll stop a person also.
There you go. There you go.
Um,
So you got a little 9mm pistol. Is that a semi-automatic pistol, the Scorpion?
yes. Yeah, it's a CZ Scorpion.
Yeah, I think
It's
I've got a picture of one like that. I think we recovered one of those when I was in Kosovo, actually.
Of course, I don't really advertise too much in the neighborhood about, what I carry or what I got. The secret is just be secret about it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. All the folks that are open carrying and running around doing things, they're just bringing attention to themselves. They'll be the first target if somebody really wants to do something with them.
Yeah. I mean, you learn in the military about stealth, and I don't like to make myself a target. So I'm entitled to my beliefs, but I don't want to make myself a target about it. Especially, I live here in Northwest Indiana. We have a lot of people from Illinois, Chicago area that come around here. So, different frame of thought, of mind sometimes. Yeah.
Well, Patrick, I sure do appreciate you spending some time with me. I enjoyed it very much. Is there a story that you haven't told yet that maybe you want to tell? We're trying to make memories for your daughter and your grandkids and those that come behind you, right?
Yeah. So, for my daughter, she believes in Santa Claus still, of course. And we have to quietly, when she goes to bed, we have to quietly, after we wrap the gifts and hide them in a room and lock the door, bring them down, and seeing her, like this past Christmas, she came downstairs. I got her Barbie dream house. It's one of those big dream houses. Believe me, I play with it enough. And she knew what it was, even wrapped up, because they know these things. And what you see in the movies when the little girl goes down the stairs and Christmas, and she sees her gifts, and that was by far my greatest memory of just watching her go down the stairs, just so excited to see that Santa Claus came. Because I kept on saying, if you're a bad girl, I'm gonna call Santa on the phone. And of course, this is my phone. Beep, 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 beep. Hello, Santa. And then, of course, she doesn't realize okay, Santa, I love you. See you later. Bye. Like, so that's the memories, Those are the good memories.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Amen. They grow up so fast, right? You'll look around and, and they'll be 18 and off to college and joining the service, or you never know, right?
Yeah, you never know.
You never know. You never know. Well, thanks so much for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it.
Note. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It's so we'll
Marshall in the middle.